guys, how's it going? Welcome to crawlers versus trail trucks. So this is my RS10 crawler, a lot of you know that. And this is my SCX10 deadbolt. Now, trail truck, crawler. Now, my RS10 is the RS10 Rock Slide, which is a competition crawler, okay? The regular XT RS10 is not a competition crawler, but we're talking crawlers versus trail trucks. Now, the SCX10 is a competition classed trail truck. Now, a crawler is designed specifically for just that. It's a rock crawler. It's designed for crawling rocks. It's not designed to go high speeds. It's designed for a ton load of torque and very low speed. Okay, and you do need to know how to set up a crawler properly to crawl the most amount of different terrains of rocks without having to change setups, right? But you'd be the same way with your trail truck. They all have setups that have to be done. You got to find the best tire that works for you, not just for your style of driving, but for the terrain you're working with, right? Like mostly with trail trucks, you see them going around like places like out in the woods and stuff like that, like we do videos of. And we come across rocks and we rock crawl with them, and they're half decent little machines for rock crawling. But a trail truck is not specifically a rock crawler because it has a lot of wheel speed and it doesn't have a lot of torque. Now this is set up out of the box, right? Now that can change. If you get into a 60 or an 80 turn motor, well then you're definitely going to decrease wheel speed. Okay, so you'll go from say 13 miles an hour stock to somewhere around maybe 7 or 8 miles an hour, okay, when you go to like a 40, 50, 60 turn motor type of thing. And the higher the turn rate, the lower your speed is going to be on the top end at full throttle, but the more torque you're going to be able to produce, right? And so where an actual rock crawler comes in is these are not about speed whatsoever. I mean, I'm pretty sure this thing might do 5 miles an hour, could be 4. It's not very fast, but it has a ton load of torque. And if you check through my videos, you'll find a video where I actually used the RS10 and towed my Traxxas Summit behind it. And the RS10 did it without too much difficulty, and it didn't even break a sweat. The motor temps didn't even come up. I mean, it was wonderful, so you've got a ton load of torque here. Now, even though my RS10 is no longer set up specifically for crawling, it's now set up as a trail truck crawler, and it's still a really good crawler for doing mostly crawling with because my heights are still good and up. I've got good tires that are very soft compound and very grippy. Now with the G-Made Bighorn tires, one thing that you're going to find out really quick is that they do work best when you reverse the treads. They will work the best, but having them pointed the way they are now, which is normal setup, though they will grip, they do lack the ability for really good grip, okay? So to get better grip, you reverse the treads. Now, with the SCX10s, they usually, for the most part, will come with crappy tires. I mean, let's face it, all RTR vehicles come with crappy tires, okay? But these are definitely the epitome of garbage. They do work well as far as dry surfaces on rocks. They are pretty grippy to an extent. But if there's any kind of moisture involved, they slip very easy. There's not a lot of weight in the truck either. Okay, now this RS10 is about 4 times more weight. Well, not quite. Well, yeah, maybe. Let's see. I'd say my RS10 is about 2.5 times heavier, okay? Now, the nice thing about the RS10, of course, is the battery is mounted right in the middle, where the deadbolt from factory setup is in the rear. So this makes it, if you're going up on an angle, it can haul you backwards pretty quick and you can wipe out, right? So you really need to either center the battery, and there's a mod for that, or you modify and have a battery up front and a battery in the rear, and that will give you equal weight front and back, providing you're using the exact same batteries, which you would be smart to do. And then of course you run them in parallel together, and you can get a ton load of runtime. And this thing does get a fair amount of runtime as it is. I run a 2200 milliamp 3 cell on this, And even after 2 hours of, doing some rock crawling and, blazing through the trails and stuff, literally blazing, I have a lot of fun with it, and sometimes I drive slower. The 2200 milliamp 3 cell does seem to be pretty accurate, pretty adequate for approximately about 2 hours of runtime. Now my 3800 milliamp NIM pack that I use in the RS10, because they are high turn rate motors, so they're producing a lot of torque and very little speed, they don't draw very much current, right? And we're also feeding two 390 motors as opposed to one 540 can size motor, okay? So we are feeding a lot more motor here, we've got a lot more weight to pull, everything else, and I can go for an easy 4 hours, with my nickel methyl hydrate battery in this, and this is a 3800 milliamp battery that I use. And so you're going to increase run times too with a higher turn rate motor and still being at the same milliamp level. So you may or may not have to even ever worry about swapping batteries when you're out on the trails, or you're doing a comp crawl of some sort or a comp run. Now as far as design factors and limitations go, neither one of these things are really bashers, okay? And they're not intended to be bashers, right? They are competition level grade machines for specific purposes, okay? So if you're thinking about, maybe putting this one or this one into a mud bog that's got some pretty thick, deep mud, and you're going to sit there and pin the throttle, you're going to blow stuff up. And that's just plain stupidity as far as I'm concerned, and unnecessary. And it gets costly having to replace parts, because the more you start digging into these mud spots and getting stuck, the more amperage you're drawing. Like when you look at straight running and doing some crawling with the deadbolt, for example, with its stock motor, I mean, it's a fast truck. It's about 13 miles an hour top speed, so it's not producing a ton of torque. But when you put that under a load, you're causing a lot of restriction, and you're causing the system to say, I need more power, and it's only going to give you so much, and it's going to keep trying to ask for more that it can't have. So what happens is you overheat everything, and boom, you blow stuff up. Same thing will happen with the RS10 if you start taking it through mud like that. Now driving over regular muddy surfaces is not an issue. It's not a big deal. You can do it with either one of these things, right? It's when you get into those deep muds, or you're in situations where you're trying to pull something off that requires a lot of torque, and you have more speed than torque. So if you're going up, say, an incline, for example, just putting your truck on something like this, you have to be very, very light and easy on the trigger, because this truck will actually gain speed rapidly and jump backwards, and you wipe out, right? So to avoid that, you've got to have good trigger control. And so what happens is now you're trying to go slow, and you've got all the weight of the truck being pulled back, and it's trying to push it forward, right? And even though it's four-wheel drive, it doesn't matter. Now it's surging the hell out of the system. And this motor is not designed to handle that kind of a surge load. So eventually what's going to happen is you're going to burn up your motor. And sometimes when you do take out a brushed motor, you will sometimes take out a ESC along with it. So now it becomes a real expensive thing to do, right? So then you got to ask yourself, well, why wouldn't they set it up properly to begin with? It's an RTR truck, guys, okay? You want it set up to handle more torque load, even on the stock ESC, and not fry stuff, you got to spend the extra bucks. And I can tell you right now, with a little bit of research that my friend RC Johnny's been doing, he found, I believe they were 60 turn motors, if I'm correct, from RC4W Drive, and they were about 15 bucks. The stock 27 turn in this thing is about 13 bucks. So for 2 bucks more, you get a 60 turn motor, so better than double the turn rate, so you're going to get a lot more torque and a lot less speed. Okay, so that's going to actually assist. An 80 turn motor would probably be the optimal motor, and still sticking with stock gearing too, and you'd be fine, and you can do a lot of crawling, you can have a lot of weight in the truck, and not worry about anything being hurt, okay? Now, the one thing too with whether you're rock crawling or a trail truck stuff, you are driving vehicles that are not very fast, so you got to kind of reprogram. This is not adrenaline rush speed freak stuff. This is adrenaline rush in another way, okay? Some people get quite the rush from doing crawling because you are conquering obstacles. right? So that's a huge thing for some people. Now I like my bashing with my slash, my wife Stan Peach, she loves it. I love it too. It's a cool truck. But I've got my slash, my rustler. They're great basher machines. My Team Durango. I mean that's a competition race short course truck, and that's something that is meant for the truck. It's not a basher. Okay. You know, and then I've got these machines too, and I've got my Summit, and so on, right? And my Summit has its purpose. It can actually produce more torque than 50 of these together. You know, like we've all seen the Traxxas Summit and the amount of torque it can produce. Stock setup, it can drag a person across the floor. It can pull a $4,000 or 4,000 pound SUV. It can push a car backwards with just the rear end. You know, and it just loves it. You know what I mean? And it can do it. It's got torque, like unbelievable, right? And it's also a bashing machine where it's 20 mile to 25 mile an hour bashing on high speed on the high gear. So you know, I mean, the Summit is also a truck which is a class of its own, right? So you can't even compare it to anything but a Summit. What's to compare? They're the same. There's nothing like the Summit out on the market. Nothing. Or anything as strong and durable either, in my opinion. But with these machines, certainly they are modifiable. You can change it, you know, anything you want on them and upgrade stuff to a certain point, right? This has a lot more available. This not so much. This you got to try and figure out what you can make fit on it because it is a Red Cat, and even Red Cat didn't offer very much for modifications. However, you do have 2.2 beadlock rims here, so you can use a variety and a large variety of that of 2.2 size tires, right? And you could switch down to the 1.9s if you wanted to and do other things, you know. Your wheels really are kind of like an endless possibility, right? Now with the transmission, you can upgrade to the steel gears, but why bother? I mean, I've tortured, literally tortured, and making this thing pull the Summit is a lot of torture on the gear train. I still haven't even chipped a tooth, right? I know of people on YouTube that have broken the gears in this, and I don't know how the hell they're doing it, but I mean, I've done probably the same, if not worse than they've done, and I haven't even chipped a tooth on a gear yet in either one. Now, the nice thing too about this type of a crawler, okay, is not only does it have an offer four-wheel steering, which you can upgrade to on the axials, it comes stock with the four-wheel steering. So it's already going to take out just about any regular crawler that has two-wheel steering, okay? Because the four-wheel gives you that much more steering capability to get around corners and do, you know, weird stuff, twisty stuff, and, you know, weird angle grabbing and stuff. And, you know, you can do dig mods on this thing too. People have done it. Now, my crawler is not as articulated as it was out of the box because I got a heavy body on here, so I switched to a monster truck suspension. But like I said, it still does a really excellent job as a crawler. Of course, it's no longer allowed to compete in this setup, but it's still a very good crawler, and it makes a pretty cool looking trail truck too. And it's not about speed. I don't care about the speed when it comes to driving this or driving this. The speed's not important. You know, I want to go and I want to conquer rocks. I want to conquer root systems in the trails, you know. Plus I want to, you know, run around a little bit and have some fun, you know. Now this is a little bit more of an adrenaline rush, of course, but it has a lot less torque capability the way it is compared to this one, right? So there's goods and bads. Servos can easily be upgraded on the Red Cat. You know, I've gone to Traxxas 2075s. And I finally put servo savers on because every time somebody else drives this truck, they break my servos on me. Whereas when I drive this truck with the aluminum servo horns, I don't break the gears in my servos. But I know my truck, you know, and that's the thing that's very, very important is, you know, you have to master each truck you have for your usage. Like this SCX-10 is going to be different than the Jeep Rubicon, you know, for example. It's going to be different than some other brand of a trail truck. So they all have differences. You know, just the tires alone, it's like reprogramming yourself. You have to know how these tires have their limits, what they can do. You swap on a set of rip saws or something else, you're changing the truck. right? So now you have to relearn your truck with those tires. So it's a skill to master, right? And you'll eventually find the best tires for your truck and the best setup for your suspension and everything. I have a lift kit on here too, which gives me some extra height. I can go a lot higher with this and I still will not bind my drive shafts. You know, where some people say, well, if you go, if you jack it up, you're going to bind your drive shafts. Not these ones, okay? Maybe on an AX10 you would, but not these, okay? They have enough spacing that I've actually had the suspension, just tested it with completely lifted right up, which actually will bring this up about, to about this high, okay? So about another little over an inch higher, and an inch is actually quite a bit, other than the fact it will make it really super tipsy, because you're changing your center of gravity, right? But even with the highest lift point, I still don't bind my shafts, right? And if I do notice any kind of thing that could possibly be binding, well, that's when I can loosen the pressure off on the preload of my shocks, which will make it squat back down a little bit more, right? So there's always tuning you can do, and there's different attack angles you can use with your suspension to get different articulation and so on. So it can become a very good crawler. You have to do some modifications, of course. So there are definitely huge differences night and day. This is not a trail truck. It's kind of a wannabe, but it's a half trail truck, half crawler now, where this is basically out of the box. It's half trail truck, half crawler, right? So, it's also got limitations, because the way the downlinks, it's not just about height, it's the way where your downlinks come down at and attach, right? It's going to limit you to certain types of heights of and sizes of rocks. You're going to get hung up a lot. Now, with this, even the way this is set up here compared to this one, I can conquer rocks with this that this one can't do, because I have the extra height in this, and this is set actually, I've got about 1/4 of an inch to go at the back, and actually nothing in the front. The front's lowered as far as it can go. So, it has the ability to go up a lot higher, right? But then when you go higher, you get more tipsier, especially when it comes into this sort of thing. You want a good long spread so that you can keep this angle up, going up a surface. If your stance is too tall, right, then what happens is now you're flipping it. Now you might be able to attack an angle, say like this. If you try something like this, you're definitely going over, because now you're too high up, right? This is why you also don't want to go too high up on this truck, right? Because by going too high up, you cause the same problem, right? And even with a battery in the front and a battery in the rear, it makes no difference. You got a battery in the front, battery in the rear, wheel weights only in the front, and you're still going to have the same problem. If you're too high up, you're going to fall over fast, right? So you've got to learn to tune your rig so they can do the maximum inclines, towards the vertical mark, but also be able to handle everything else. And that's just trial and error and learning as you go, right? So, but anyways, guys, that's pretty much about, what I wanted to cover for now. But I mean, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll do the best I can to answer. There's a ton load more information I can give you, but I don't want to make this an excessively long video, so I don't mind answering, questions here and there. But just keep one thing in mind too. I am not the far most expert on these rigs, or in the crawling world, but I have learned a lot by watching guys like Crawler Ted and DJ Medic, RC Sparks, and guys like them. I've learned a lot from them that's actually helped me become better faster, okay? Especially when it comes to, knowing your machine. You have to know your machine, and you have to know its limitations. And you stick within the limitations of that machine and don't push them too much past that, you're going to have a very low maintenance machine. But when you start going excessive type of stuff with these things that they're really not even designed or meant for to begin with, you will start breaking stuff. You will start blowing up your electronics, and if you've got the money to keep fixing it, by all means go right ahead. But I mean, hey, I ain't rich, so I mean, I blow an ESC, I'm down for a couple of weeks to a month, right? Because I'm going to have to order a new one in. I don't have a drawer full of motors, drawer full of ESCs, a drawer full of this and that and all that sort of jazz like there are many people who do, and that's great for them. but the majority of us don't have that kind of pile of extra stuff, you know. But I also usually don't excessively overdo it with my machines that much, and so I'm not worried about blowing an ESC or a motor out, you know. But I mean, eventually one day it may happen, you know. Brushed motors do not last forever, especially non-rebuildable ones. They do not last forever. But I've had this thing for a year and a half now, my RS10, and I've done some pretty brutal, nasty stuff with it, and I've really pushed it hard, and nothing has caused me any grief. I broke one link in here when I had another mishap. I broke some links here and replaced them. But other than that, I mean, well, my body was part of that mishap. But I mean, for me driving this thing, I never have even broken a servo gear in my Traxxas servos. It's other people that shatter the gears on me, so I had to put servo savers on, you know. But yeah, it's a wonderful machine. I mean, if you get a chance to get a Red Cat RS10 Rock Slide, I definitely say that it's a worthwhile crawler to get into, especially if you're going to crawl and you're just getting into crawling. It's very inexpensive. Like $229 is what I paid for this. The new version rock crawler, now I don't know if it's competition grade from Red Cat, but they got a new crawler out for 110 and 116, same thing, different scale. And you know, I'm going to eventually check into, you know, the 110 scaler for sure, because I really don't like small machines. They just bother me. I like 110, 18, 17, 16, and eventually I'm going to get into a lot more of the 18, 17, 16, 15 stuff down the road as I can afford it. But I really like the big stuff better myself. It's not that I won't run smaller things, but I prefer the bigger machines, to be honest. But in a year and a half, that's pretty good service, and my bearings are good. I've had this thing through mud, through snow, through the creeks. I've done, you know, I've brought the water level up pretty good with this thing, and never an issue. And it is all waterproof electronics in this thing, even right out of from the factory for this version. This thing here is also completely waterproof, and I've had a great time with it. And you know, I've not broken one darn thing on it yet. I do not have the original servo, but that I told you guys a story about that before, that I was out with RC Johnny and my Summit bumped into the side of his Wraith, and he wasn't using a servo saver, and I actually shattered his Sabox metal geared servo on him, and I just nudged him. I didn't smack into him, I just nudged him, and it killed the servo. So I said, well, here you go, just take my Tactic servo and I'll just go buy a new one, you know, eventually. And so this thing was down for a bit. But what I did was, to get me by, is I bought this $10 Tower Pro servo from Banggood. And I thought, well, it's 3 kilograms more torque too, and it is faster than the original Tactic metal geared servo that's about 50 bucks. And now they didn't specify if it's waterproof or water resistant or whatever, but I have had this thing through some pretty good water and stuff, and the snow and that, and I've had not one hiccup with this servo, you know. So maybe it is waterproof, you know. I have no clue, you know, and I didn't bother to even research it on the internet because I didn't care, you know. If I got it wet and it shorted out, big deal, I'll just go buy another one, you know. 10 bucks is 10 bucks. And Banggood actually has a 4-pack of these servos for like $30. So it's like getting one for free, right? Buy 3, get 1 free. And I'm gonna buy a few of those kits too, because I'm really liking this servo. It's doing a great job, you know. And it was, so I'm not even gonna bother with another Tactic servo. Why? Why spend 50 bucks on something that's actually better? You know, it's stronger, it's faster. And you know, it seems to be you know, holding back the water. So you know, why go and spend money on something that's, you know, lesser, in my opinion, you know. And well, not just my opinion, just the facts are it's lesser, right? So anyways, that's pretty much it. That's all, you know the drill, and we'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.